everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and this is a TVR T350C, another truly bonkers TVR. Let me just give you some quick highlights. When this was launched, this was the same price as a BMW E46 M3, but it had the same, well, it had a higher power to weight ratio than a Lamborghini Murcielago, and all that in a package that was shorter than an MX-5. Lucky then, they decided to calm things down with the steering rack, which was 1.7 turns lock to lock. As far as I'm aware, that's the fastest of any production car. It's hard to understand just where this sits in TVR's bewildering lineup of the 2000s. They had the Cerberus, that was supposedly their GT running the new V8 engine. Then a Timora, that was their entry level. The Tuscan, I did a video on one of those running the straight six and it was absolutely terrifying. Then there is the Sagaris, which is basically a Tuscan on steroids. And a Typhon, which I think was their quickest car, but I know very little about that. And then finally this, the T350C. All of them had various flavors of their two brand new engines, the Speed 6 and the V8. The T350C was essentially a Timora with a roof. So you would then say, oh, okay, so it's a coupe version of the Timora. But then, being TVR, they also made a T350T with a Targa top. What is for sure is that this is another absolutely gloriously individual TVR. I think it's possibly the most handsome design out of all of them. They all look good in different ways, but I think in terms of a cohesive design, this is really right up there with the best of them. The story goes that they were developing a new race series to go along with the Tuscan one. And when this was developed in the wind tunnel, and they thought the outcome was so pretty that they had to make one. It runs a 3.6 version of the Al Melling designed straight six unique to TVR. This is an advanced race-inspired engine with finger and follower architecture. It also has a dry sump. They are very, very special engines. They have a bit of a bad reputation for going pop, but Tom, who owns this one, hasn't had any mods. This one, as far as he knows, hasn't been touched and it has been reliable. The interior, by TVR standards, I actually find relatively restrained. As with most TVRs, because it was too expensive to actually mold dashboards and so on, everything is covered in leather, which was unbelievably the cheaper option. But the thing is, fit and finish may not always be brilliant, but you have a really attractive layout and dash, and the instrumentation, the sort of aluminium milled knobs are absolutely fantastic. There are idiosyncrasies. So for example, to open the doors, that is the button, not intuitive. For the windows, next to that. And then you have these sort of LED lights for the ventilation controls. But this has some other incredible TVR touches. The fuel filler is an absolute work of art. You have a little crank handle in the boot, which then opens a little shuttlecock ball valve. I mean, it was just, that's enough. I know it's silly, that's enough to make me fall in love with this car. But let's experience the might. Lovely. So the Tuscan I was in was a fair bit more rabid than this. This isn't quite as intimidating in the way it's delivering the power. It's still a very fast car though. Less than 1,100 kilos, 350 horsepower, even if that was optimistic TVR standards, that is still a very quick car and it feels it. There's other touches that I really love. If you look at the rear hatch, the little clip that opens and closes it, work of art. as are the hinges that hold it up and down. There is one major difference between this and a Tamora, apart from the way they look and maybe suspension and geometry, and that is that this has a fully integrated roll cage. So it does feel quite a bit more together than some of the other TVRs that I have been in. Moving on from that, the pedals are floor hinged. Again, bits of milled aluminium. They are simply works of art. I have to say, I don't enjoy the way the clutch works because you tend to push it all the way down. It's much more noticeable than with the brake or with the throttle. But for me, it's a slightly uncomfortable movement with my foot. You tend to mainly notice it when you're parking and using the clutch a lot. During normal driving, it's not an issue. And the throttle and brake pedal are actually perfectly placed for heel and toe. We have to turn around here, so going up the hill, I'm going to treat you to another run through the gears. In true TVR style, nothing is quite as it normally is in cars, so you have the instruments with the needles pointing up, going towards each other. Because the road surface is so cold, I wasn't quite keeping my foot to the floor the whole time, so that was maybe 90% run. It feels great. The Speed 6 just, it sounds so distinctive. The seats are comfortable, it's a good driving position. Once you get used to the idiosyncrasies of the switchgear, the ergonomics are all right, I think. But the chassis. Now, the Tuscan that I drove really was pretty scary. I loved it, but it so kept you on your toes. It has that mega quick steering rack, and I think if I was driving one of these TVRs for the first time, it would take me a fair bit to get used to it. Because I know what they're like, I'm not tensing up. When you're driving it, it kind of moves around, the car follows cambers, and the moment you put any input, the car responds. The big mistake is to then start, holding onto the wheel really hard, trying to, you have to relax with it, and then it's just an absolute beauty. The steering feel is exemplary. So just a little reminder there that the limits today are fairly low. So the moment you open it up, especially on this road that's been a bit in shadow, still a bit slippery, it will move around. The specs on this 350 then are pretty daunting. The short wheelbase, the quick steering, and it is a car that you have to respect, but I think it might well be one of my favorite all-time TVRs. It's not quite as scary as I thought it was going to be. This really is an absolute beauty, this 350. I really, really love it. I recently did a review of a Cerberus. I'll put a link to that at the end of this, and once I'd finished with that, I thought, I want one of these, and I've been seriously considering getting one, and now I have a huge dilemma, because having driven this, I think this might be my favorite all-time TVR. I do love the Cerberus, but I tend to prefer a smaller car. So whilst they do things a little bit differently, they are both unmistakably TVR. But for me, this, I don't know, it might just be the better car for me. There's another surprise with this, and that is that although yes, the steering is very, very fast, there's a sweetness about it. So the way it transitions from off-center, because the weighing is so spot on and it's not at all artificial, it feels absolutely spot on. It puts on just the right amount of resistance so that you're not fighting that super quick rack. Thank you so much for watching. If you have one of your cars that you want me to do a review on, then please get in touch. This is the best way, and I'll put up 2 TVR videos now. One on the Chimera, which gives you a bit more of a sort of TVR history, and then secondly, the one on the Sabra as well. Thank you so much, and see you soon.